whatever I say. So happy Monday, everybody. We're so happy to have you. It is about 8 p.m. on a Monday night, June 10th, and we're continuing on the subject we left off last time. With that being said, we are talking about prejudices. We're talking about the Baha'i teaching that prejudice, the way that we've had prejudice over the millennia, where we judge others because of how they look, what their race is, what their nationality is, what their mother or father was. These things, such as things that we cannot change about who we are, where we come from. These prejudices we must put behind as we recognize our one human family. With that being said, we believe in this session, as we have over the previous sessions, that the manifestation of God, Baha'u'llah, which means the glory of God in English, has brought teachings for humanity so that we can learn how we can grow together as one human family. And to start, these teachings, we believe, present that roadmap to do something now, not hope for a day that will never come, but build that world that we actually can have starting today. So with that said, we've spoken about various elements, various important pieces that are needed to promote a better world. We are focusing this time on the elimination of prejudice. So with that being said, prior to going forth and reading these beautiful quotations, we're going to say a prayer, establish a spiritual atmosphere, and with that spiritual atmosphere, we're going to address these quotes. And we appreciate Mr. Gilbert Hakim for bringing these quotes onto these PowerPoint slides for us so we can read them. Point of reference for everyone, some of the quotes are provisional quotations from translations of the original Farsi or Arabic. So please bear with us. Some of the quotes may be new because they are provisional translations, and we are so grateful to the provisional translators as well. With that being said, I believe we've had enough time to get a volunteer to say a prayer.
I'll start.
Thank you.
O my God, aid thou thy servant to raise up the word and to refute what is vain and false, to establish the truth, to spread the sacred verses abroad, reveal the splendors and make the morning light to dawn in the hearts of the righteous. Thou art verily the generous, the forgiving.
Thank you very much. We're going to read these two passages, I think, repeating it, and then delve into its what it presents. Let's someone read.
The most glorious fruit of the tree of knowledge is this exalted word. Of one tree are all ye the fruit, and of one bough the leaves. Let not man glory in this, that he loveth his country. Let him rather glory in this, that he loveth his kind. Shall I read the second one too,
Sure.
Gilbert?
Go ahead.
Yeah. O ye discerning ones, verily the words which have descended from the heaven of the will of God are the source of unity and harmony for the world. Close your eyes of racial differences and welcome all with the light of oneness.
So here, obviously, tree of knowledge is understanding where the source of humanity, where it started. Genetically, as we know, we all came from Africa, and they spread throughout the world, and through evolutionary process, acquired different colors based on environment that we were living in. And generation after generation, these introduction of viruses created variability within how we look. And of course, language is developed in different areas. But source of it is obviously the same. So here, and we have this knowledge today, so it's not a guesswork overall. And discoveries of genetics prove that already. Now here, ye the fruit, and of one bough the leaves. So we are all connected from one source that we have been created. Let not man glory in this, that he loveth his country. So the location that you've been born to is completely random, and your forefathers, and you could have been in any other part of the world in general. So there is no glory in terms of loving only your own country. You should look at other countries and adherents or citizens of those countries as your brothers, basically. So the key is to create that notion that regardless where one is born or how they look, they are part of the same family and is coming from the same tree. But this knowledge is already a science and a fact, generally. On the other hand, obviously, the promotion of prejudices against race, obviously these tablets was revealed in mid-1800s, and prejudices against race, especially slavery, was still in force, although majority of Western countries are trying to dismantle slavery wherever they found it. But overall, it was dominant. And even many different religious doctrine prior to Islam was discriminating against race. And this relates to, for example, Christians, that they taught that the intellect of an individual had relationship with their skin color. Even some of the major philosophers of 18th and 19th century were completely racist, basically. And because that was the knowledge that they had at the time, although they're very giant philosopher in their field, but it doesn't mean that they were complete from perspective of having the knowledge that we have today related to having the knowledge of genetics that we know today. So as you see, is source of unity and harmony in the world is this elimination of discrimination against race. And many different, you go into different areas, still there are some sects that believe in this differentiation based on color in general. Now, some of it has to do also with cultural, that they don't accept any, it's not just the race, but they do not accept any individual that is not part of their race, actually, or their community. If you go, for example, in Japan, they don't intermix with foreigners at all. So you have a lot of Brazilians there. There are a lot of other minorities like South Koreans or Chinese even, but they have their own towns. They don't intermix with them. So this is a cultural discrimination that exists in that country, although they're very civilized and highly educated. think 98% of the people can read or write. It's one of the highest in the world. So reality is that these are the two major aspects about discrimination related to national origin as well as race that is hampering growth of the humanity and unification of humanity. And these are the directions that were given by leader of the faith in terms of creating that cohesive, integrated, unified mankind. Any questions, comments on this one? If not, we're going to read again.
We desired but the good of the world and the happiness of the nations, that all nations should become one in faith, and all men as brothers, that the bonds of affection and unity between the sons of men should be strengthened, that diversity of religion should cease, and differences of race be annulled.
So these very important aspects. Now we know 90-some% of population on the earth believe in God in a different way. Obviously, even in China, which is a communist country, there is notion in terms of there is a higher being with the older culture that they have. Obviously, communism tried to erase that, but they weren't successful. And of course, now they discriminate against religion in China today. But in overall, what divides people that believe in God, majority believe in God, is the sects and religions that they follow, which religion is the application of the word of God by humans on earth. So it's susceptible to degradation and dilapidation as time goes by, because humanity would alter it to their advantage. And that's why you have so many sects in almost every religion, prior religion than Baha'i doctrine. So it's fairly obvious that elimination of the division in religion, which all pray to the same God, would eliminate that problem as far as initiation of strife and wars because of religion or race for that matter. So here, the solution is obviously one faith, but how do we get there? How do we make humanity, and how do we get there from where we are today? Now, as you see around the world today, majority of conflict has some sort of a religious connotation to it, or religious doctors or ecclesiastical structures creates these issues that entice people to take arms and try to defend their religion. And you see this even between Muslims in Pakistan, Afghanistan, and other areas of Muslim-dominated countries, that one sect is discriminated against another and vice versa. So how do we get there? And Shoghi Effendi mentions that during the heroic age, Baha'u'llah mentioned that if adherents of the Baha'i religion would exercise what was mandated to them, the entire world would have become Baha'i. So you see, it's a failure of the Baha'is to exercise and adhere to the doctrine of these commandments that comes from the God through Baha'u'llah would have changed the world. Obviously, we lost that chance for whatever reason. Now, Shoghi Effendi mentions these strifes and conflicts that is brewing around the world against discrimination against religion or irreligion for that matter would create an environment where governments would ban actually religion or dilute the impact or teachings of the religion and pointing it at the conflict that it arises between adherents of those religions. So the first solution they're going to come up with is let's get rid of religion. And what happens during the process, those bases of ethics that was brought in by religion, by Holy Spirit, or efficient cause of the prior religions would disappear slowly. You see promiscuity, and we see the remnant of it, even institution of marriage, and all those basic areas that were protecting the family is being taken away. Little by little, it's going to be chipped away. So you see prostitution, pornography, rate of divorce, you have gender inequality, contention between different groups, religious groups, is causing that implosion of religious beliefs. And especially in the West, this ideology of liberation theology that has seeped since 1960s has been dominant in terms of attacking religion and attacking the basis of what promotes what religion promotes. As far as the, for example, abortion laws and other areas that relates to the family, or laws of divorce, or laws of marriage, for that matter, or interaction between children and parents, and what rights each have, and what rights parents have to educate their children. When you're looking at the society today, barely a girl talks to their parents about maybe 6 hours a week. The boys talk only 2 hours a week. And imagine they're on their cell phone and they're talking to their peers, or they're chasing social media, and they're getting information in 30 seconds or 1 minute bits of information. Obviously, it's not a conducive of training young minds in terms of what is ethical, what is not. So that process of protection of the Holy Spirit, or the efficient cause, or religious doctrine that protects the family, is being destroyed completely. So what ends up happening when that occurs, although societies may be materially rich, but spiritually poor, that would create environment of massive type of problems regarding alcoholism, regarding drug abuse, regarding pornography, and any other areas in terms of ethics as a whole. this shouldn't be taken as that people that are atheists, they're unethical. That's not true. Actually, they're very, very ethical people as well. But society as a whole, when you don't have a guard rails in terms of what is ethical and what is not, people migrate toward their desires without keeping in mind of what their desire may harm the society as a whole. So that process of individualism and consumerism that promotes the self and gratification, instant gratification of what you need, is moving the whole society toward that direction, which is contrary to the doctrine of religion as a whole, which is trying to protect the family and the society as a whole and the interaction of the individuals. So you see here, the first message here is that after that collapse of the society and loss of ethics, governments would come and look at societies that are models of religious doctrines, and they would pick one and try to promote it. So everybody goes back to their roots. And of course, as we promote, the Baha'i religion encompasses all the other prior religion as well. And it's a progressive revelation where continuation of the message of God, obviously the latest one is the Baha'i religion, which encompasses all the teachings of the prior religions. So eventually that would get materialized, not because people like it, because they have no alternative and they migrate toward that. And the question is that now, what is our job? Our job is, we're in the phase of destruction of the ecclesiastical structures in the world. And even many countries or many people are becoming anti-religion because of the atrocities that is occurring in the name of religion. So in that phase, then they will look at societies and communities that are cohesive and following doctrine of the Holy Spirit or efficient cause, and societies, their societies will not have the rate of divorce or alcoholism or drugs of abuse or pornography and so on and so forth. And then they would pick, collectively, they would pick that religion as the major religion of the world and invite and make people educated in that doctrine. So this phase is going to occur after the collapse of the other religious doctrines due to our method of second laws of thermodynamics. Religion is application of those revelations of God, which is man-made because we're exercising it. And because it's man-made, it's going to fall into entropy, which is destruction. And the entire universe is going through disintegration and basically creating unuseful energy, which is heat. So if you put a jumbo jet into a desert, after millions of years, it turns into dust. But reverse doesn't occur. That dust, after a million years, doesn't become a jumbo jet. So this deterioration is part of the evolution and part of the universe. And it's applied everywhere. There's nowhere in the universe that doesn't follow that law. So once the religious doctrines implode, humanity would look for a solution to relieve himself from the ills that that, or viruses, that they would infect the body of humanity. And by religion at that time would be the only antidote for it, to cure it. Any comments on this? So these
No, Gil.
bonds are,
Well,
go ahead.
I was going to comment. It's just like, well, the thing is, I'm noticing a pattern as to what's causing this disunity. And, to me, the people in power, the ecclesiastical leaders, would be opposed. Well, the thing is, I mean, you go to the history of the Baha'i faith, Baha'u'llah and the Bab, I mean, they abolished the priesthood. And it seems to me that those people in power would take umbrage as to, their power being taken away from them. So therefore, I mean, yes, we talk about the oneness of mankind, but obviously we're going to have to deal with the ecclesiastical leadership. I mean, look what's happening in Iran. I mean, you have them in power, and the Baha'is are, systematically persecuted for, existing. So it's just something that we're just going to have to keep in mind from here on out.
Of course, but the only difference is that in Christianity, church and state got separated, and ecclesiastical structure don't have that much power in terms of what they had before.
That's true today. If you look at European history, the Holy Roman Empire, for one, and
of course,
a lot of the European fiefdoms and all that. I mean, the church was the state.
But, of course, of course.
With the quote Enlightenment, with the Renaissance period, where the enlightened individuals decided to say, "Hey, let's separate church and state, and let's just govern for the sake of the people instead of power." That's just a personal.
Of course. So these are really key elements where obviously this separation didn't occur in the Islamic doctrine, and they're suffering for it. But in this reality of presence of clergy, even in those countries, are superficial because they lost their base of adherence. Although they may be in power today, but in reality, their base has been disappearing and has disappeared already. Majority of those people that used to be Muslim, they're anti-Muslim or anti-religion as a whole. So this process of destruction has already occurred in Shia Islam and is occurring in Sunni Islam as well. So they're moving to that process of the legacy religions imploding is occurring every day, and it will happen within next probably few decades. There's no question about it. Majority of churches are, no one actually goes into churches in Europe. All the nuns or orders of nuns or orders of priests are collapsing because nobody's joining them anymore. So those processes are quite in place, and many of the even scholars of those religions, Islamic religions, came to that conclusion that application of the doctrine that was given 1400 years ago doesn't apply today. It's not that they don't understand it. The problem that you mentioned relates to not only they would lose their power, they will lose their livelihood as well, because they have no other craft that they can rely on to make a living. especially in those Islamic countries. So that's really the crux of the process. And of course, the efficient cause mentions that there is no distinction in this world. So there is no priest, there is no broker of God on earth, except the manifestation of God, or Rasul, messenger of God.
And Gilbert, I completely agree with you. You know, at the museum, we see our students are from all over the world, right? 72,000 students across the street, one block. And when they come to our meditation room, these young 20, let's just call them 20-year-olds, right? Sort of with a, you know, broad brush stroke. They're not anymore interested in going to their traditional churches, whether they're Muslims or whether they're Catholic or whether they're Buddhist. They really have what I would term sort of become spiritual but not religious. And even Pew Research says that is the fastest growing youth trend is spiritual but not religious. And I'm seeing it, and I'm just going by what I see and hear 4 days a week, right? And I feel that the Baha'i faith is in a very good place and space because our conversation as I hold with Mayor Sani, you know, in Cameroon just yesterday morning, he says that the young people are really not as what we call phonetically inclined as their parents were. And they want to be in a more global, peaceful community. They want to have internet and have friends everywhere. They want to even marry people from different backgrounds. I think we're moving in a more what I call globally empathetic phase of dogma, where they are much more tolerant. And I'm feeling very optimistic about it. And I agree with you, you know, when he says that all nations should become one faith. It doesn't say one faith, one Baha'i faith, but, you know, respect everybody as the oneness of that one unknowable essence.
Of course. But you see, this is the whole point of it. When you're promoting a one united faith, doesn't mean you're going to discriminate against other religions. This is what needs to be differentiated. When, for example, Roman Empire picked up, I think it was Constantine that picked up Christianity, they got rid of all the Jainism and people that they destroyed all the temples of Jain people. So, and this process had occurred in many other religions, including Islamic one as well. I think Sharon had a comment.
Not much of one, but I understand and appreciate your perspective. But I was just thinking, in God Passes By, you said something about the Baha'is were responsible, but I'm looking at both the physical and the spiritual world. And I think that had the rulers in Ecclesiastes of the day accepted Baha'u'llah's letters and warnings, you know, I think that some of the disintegrative forces and the wars and so on would not be like this, because if you go back and you read, it's on about 2:1 and God Passes By. I've never really felt the fear of God until I actually reread this, because what happened to those people that were key to a secular and world, or the then world change, you know, being the leaders, because in nature, our lower nature, it's all about, our evolution as a species. And part of that is about power and control. And so these people were in power and control positions and very key to the next phase of evolution of humanity. And so those proclamations and letters that Baha'u'llah sent were very key. And they were a catalyst, if you will, for a lot of what has grown to be amounting today. Had they accepted the admonitions and the guidance of Baha'u'llah at that time, things would not be in the condition that they're in now. Now, that's a secular thing. Ecclesiastes, you've spoken about it, and my particular thing is not just what's happening with religion, because this faith has a role to play, a key role, and the world itself, society, the broader society also has a role. And so for me, I'm just trying to look at personally at, how that, given the disintegrative processes. And also, I just wanted to quickly talk about drug abuse, the ills of society, and so on, as being a byproduct, not of people doing this to themselves, but from a toxic society from the time of conception that are actually harming people. And the laws given to us around Baha'i family life and the institution of marriage that is going to produce children that are not traumatized from birth, that actually in the future may become that new race of men. Just a thought. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. So someone may need to read this one.
Sure, I'll go ahead. His Holiness Baha'u'llah hath delivered us from all forms of prejudice. It is prejudice that hath laid waste the world. Every enmity and conflict, every estrangement and affliction which hath arisen in the world hath been on account either of religious prejudice, or of national prejudice, or of racial prejudice, or of political prejudice. Prejudice is blameworthy and harmful, whatever form it take. Once prejudice in all its forms hath been dispelled from the world, mankind will obtain deliverance. We are striving to realize this cherished object. 20,000 souls were sacrificed for this mighty cause, souls who, victims of the most grievous oppression, suffered martyrdom in order that these prejudices might be eliminated, and the brotherhood and oneness of mankind might be achieved. That's from Hayami Malikat. I guess that's how you pronounce it.
Malekut. Yes. So all forms of prejudices. So what are those prejudices that creates enmity, conflict, estrangement, and afflictions that exist today in the world? These are obviously religious prejudice, which we're familiar with in terms of, you see, the source of this religious prejudice comes from the time that those Holy Spirits or writings of manifestation came about, trying to protect their flock by creating status of infidel. That means that people that are not praying to God, they're not people of God. So this issue related to religious prejudice, which exists in almost every religion, except obviously Baha'i religion. And Baha'i doctrine eliminated this problem by eliminating this word of infidel, or clean or unclean, whether the person is clean or unclean because of their belief. So now you see the religious prejudice. Of course, those people that practice the religion, majority of Muslims are actually agnostic, and they see Muslim religion as a culture. Same way Judaism is a culture, generally. And of course, Christianity is slowly disappearing also as a religion, although it's very strong in the United States in general. So that's really the religious prejudice. Now, national prejudice, which is very interesting, these are the key elements in terms of when you're looking at wars that are going around, or skirmishes between, let's say, China and India. They're all around encroaching on the other side's territory for whatever reason. So you see this national prejudice that this land belongs to us, when Abdul Baha mentions that that's where you're going to get buried anyways. So why are you fighting for it? So the question really goes back of national prejudice. And now you see actually the movement in Europe and even United States toward nationalism is getting momentum. And the reason is because of this unprecedented migration that is occurring around the world, uncontrolled, some due to war, some due to economic situation. So it's creating an environment where if this process continues, you're going to see reaction of people trying to keep their identity as a nation and try to keep other people out. So this nationalism, currently we're moving toward that. As a matter of fact, I just read this morning where even in France, Marine Le Pen, which is the far-right candidate, now has majority and looks like they're gonna dissolve the parliament and have a new election. So you see that people are fed up with the wars and this invasion of refugees that is occurring due to wars that were created in their own hands anyways. And some are actually religious-based. It started that way. So you see this nationalism is in the rise today. Now, racial prejudice is fairly obvious in terms of countries that are monolithic from perspective of the racial identity. Nowhere in the world you have the mix of the races, languages, creeds, religious background, except United States, that accepts people with diverse backgrounds. So when people in the left accuse that Americans are prejudiced, they have no idea what they're talking about. This is the most advanced culture, most integrated, less prejudicial against any race in the world. So as you see, this issue regarding race may be used as a political tool to attack the other side, whether it's one way or the other. But in reality, we have never been less prejudicial than we are today in United States in general. Now, as far as the political prejudice, this is so obvious and blatant that belonging to a doctrine or political doctrine, that shouldn't mean that you're against and you're trying to defeat your opponent. And that's really where the problem resides. The political doctrines are against each other. And who suffers is the mass of people suffering because of this uncontrolled competition and uncontrolled process of discriminating against different parties. And they're blacklisting them. They're making anyone that does not agree with them, they blacklist them. They're trying to eliminate them financially, legally, politically. It's unbelievable what is going on today. Now, I came here a little bit less than half a century ago. I never seen this kind of chaos that is today. People openly attack the other side. Neighbors attack, family members attack each other. So prejudice is when you are against another person, not for what you believe in. And this is really where the problem political prejudice is. You may have conflict with their ideology, but you shouldn't have conflict with them. And this is really the key. Or try your best to bring them down or damage them the best you can, which now, at least in the old days, they did it under the guise of politically correct, and at least they wouldn't advertise it. Now they're actually advertising it. So you see that political prejudice is highly visible now. So this this process is not just one party. All parties, both parties are doing the same thing in general. So that is political prejudice, which is harmful. So it says once prejudice in all its forms has been dispelled from the world, mankind will obtain deliverance. How many wars did we fought in East Asia because we were against communism? And guess what? At the end, we lost anyways. Because God mentions anything unnatural and man-made would implode by itself. You don't need to help it. You don't need to create wars to do that. So these are the key elements which we need to adhere to. So mankind will obtain deliverance when these prejudices disappear. So here we are striving to realize this cherished object. Now, how did, during Nasruddin Shah, how did they try to eliminate this Baha'i religion? The religion that is dominant, its doctrine is being practiced all over the world. How did they think that they discriminate, they could eliminate it? Is by killing the adherents of it. 20,000 people martyred because they wouldn't change their faith. All they had to do is say, I'm not a Baha'i. I'm a Muslim. That's all they had to say. They would have saved their skin, but they didn't. And those foolish people thought that by exterminating its adherents, the whole religion would disappear, which obviously didn't, and it never does. And the same atrocities that occurred during dispensation of Moses, Jesus, Muhammad, and Bob occurred during Baha'u'llah's time as well. So you see, it's impossible to reverse the scientific method. What is the best practice or efficient cause? Humanity out of necessity would migrate to it, even if they don't know where it came from. So these are the key elements that the price that Baha'is and Babis paid to strengthen and water the tree of life with their blood, basically. And we're spiritual inheritor of their cause. Great. Matthew, you have a question or concern? Please go ahead.
Quickly, when you talk about like prejudices, would that be like what we see with Biden and Trump in the news in our country?
Of course. Remember, the problem is not that what they speak about. majority of what they say is half truth and has
On
no
both sides.
relevancy. They take a sentence, few words out of a sentence that somebody said, and they create a story around it, and then they blast it everywhere.
But
And
why?
people,
I was curious, why is that occurring now at this point in time in history with this country? I know it's being controlled by both of them. Is it the people who actually run the country, the big corporations, making them do this?
that's because of the technology that exists today. What has happened is social media and media in general, the segments that are business to consumer, they always migrate toward the left because consumers want things free. They want to return things if they don't like it. So that's why you see Coke and Pepsi or Walmart or majority of these people that deal directly, like movie theater people, the people that really in the process of communicating, they promote stuff that may not be real, but they give it away because it doesn't come out of their pocket. Neither of the politicians are spending their money, they're spending taxpayers' money. So this is really the key. What this social media has done last probably 15, 20 years is polarized, actually. The middle class, you see, any movement has what's called bell curve. That means majority of the people have opinions within the middle of the bell curve. Their ideals are slightly different, leaning toward the left or to the right. What has happened with the social media and this bombardment of the advertising, now you have actually two bell curves, not one. The whole middle section of the politics disappeared. Now you have the left curve and then you have a right curve, and they don't talk to each other at all. When you're looking at Congress, it's very obvious. When 97% of one party votes the same way, what does it mean? That means you don't have individual
and in the middle is the gray area.
selection.
Right. So normalcy in the middle is gone.
Correct.
Okay, I got it.
The problem with that is they're using taxpayer money to create that polarized environment, and they're opening up the doors. It was funny. I just saw it was a couple of days ago. 134 people, of course, from left party in the Congress voted for legislation to allow illegal alien to vote for national selection. Can you believe this? You want the guy that came just from Afghanistan to vote for your president?
No, he has no clue what's going on, but that's the extreme.
So now you see, you have to follow the dollar. Now you see why they open up the borders free for all.
Yeah.
Because they have this idea that if they get majority, they would pass this law and you no longer would have United States of America. You're going to have United States of basically illegal aliens.
Right. That's crazy. You got it.
But anyways, we're not delving into politics. The problem that we face,
like Abdul Baha said, this is going to happen before the most greater or the lesser piece. This, I guess, this is a thing that's going to happen because it's already been predicted to happen.
Well, there is an antidote to it. Right now, you see the backlash is occurring in Europe, where the migration of basically refugees are so high that they're losing their culture. I mean, in Sweden, nobody would even think of rape. This was erased in their vocabulary. In Germany, in small towns, they're having stuff that they've never were experienced with. So you cannot follow this basically relativism. So, or relative culturalism, which is complete garbage. They say you can do whatever you learned or religious doctrine tells you in the house, but when you come out, put your ideology at home and become a normal modern man. Is this reasonable to accept? Obviously not. And that's why you see
No, that's why
nationalism.
problem, and hopefully we're smart enough to see it before it happens here.
Well,
Well, the thing is, let's look at the pattern. I mean, it's just like, here we go, U.S. foreign policy. We have these wars, and we destroy the culture of, and invade another country, and then we say, oh, we're sorry. I mean, it's just like, and then we open up our borders, and it's just like, why? I mean, you have gang violence in Central America. You have gang violence in Mexico. You have gang violence because the United States, the CIA destroyed, the government because we wanted to have secret wars going on. I mean, this is stuff that happened with Iran-Contra. I mean, this happened since the 1980s. I mean, CIA makes a secret deal with Iran with weapons and all this, and it's just like, okay.
but all of these
I mean,
are
it's the pattern follows.
Right, correct. Is in the name of good deeds that they do. Western culture colonized the entire world in the 17th and 18th century in the name of these barbaric, godless people. We want to bring Christianity to them, but meantime we rob them. So this issue has been around for at least 4 centuries or 5 centuries. So now that communication in such a way that people are recognizing what is happening, but this issue related to allowing people to practice their own Sharia law or their own culture doesn't work. It doesn't work, and it's failing miserably. And the backlash would be that nationalism would start to rise, which we see that now, basically. Gaddafi, the guy that ruled north of Africa, he mentioned that give Islam 30 years, they're gonna overrun Europe. Europe would become Muslim. And he was right. So you see the process of multiculturalism doesn't work. And this is right now is promoted by the left in this country. And all of it is for the sake of voting. Getting vote and stay in power. They do anything to stay in power. So this prejudice, political prejudice, is one of the major diseases that we have been infected. If you're one party, you shouldn't destroy the other party or do whatever you can to smear or slander the other party. And that's not how it used to be. Mr. Pills, please.
Yes, and so hopefully we don't go down that rabbit hole again, and we learn from our mistakes, and maybe we could save ourselves before It gets
You
worse.
have to start with education, and that's the
Yeah.
biggest problem. If you have liberation theologies that people are poor because of rich people, and because they're not in power, that's why they should revolt and distribute the wealth or have minimum sustenance income for everyone. Who pays for it doesn't matter. So these are the key elements that young people are infected with, this socialism, which is the most dangerous disease that exists.
That's the most. So it's almost like you got to go on a national talk show and explain this to the world at one time. And redo this on Fox Nation TV, where you got maybe 20 million people at a time can watch it, maybe get through some common sense.
Remember, you see the culture. You see, Baha'i religion is a cohesive plan. Why do you think that the right is not attracting many people? Is because they're lacking those safety nets that was put in place by the ethical societies that was created by the manifestation of God. Those laws, they're violating too. Both sides are violating the laws. Some does one side, the other does the other side. It doesn't mean that one is right or one is wrong. They're both wrong.
They shouldn't be doing it to each other, period. They should act like these.
Of course.
Well, that's the title of our show, right? That more moral society.
No, I'm sure you're gonna get. There's so many, basically, atheist and corporate structures that would shut you down immediately. You know, when you're promoting unity of mankind, when you're promoting a basic jurisdiction of distribution of resources, world resources, tribunal to decide where to produce goods and services, that is not against labor or against capital either, then those abuses that capitalism allows would disappear. You would not hire people for 25 cents an hour in Bangladesh that they work 16 hours a day and they barely can feed themselves.
That's crazy. Yep.
So capitalism without the ethics, and this is the point. So this internationalism or globalism with the doctrine of the Baha'i religion is the solution. That would take abuse from the labor and rewards the capital to the extent that they would stay in business and prosper as well.
Yep, that's the key. That's what's got to be done in order to make.
You see, the same way that you have a problem when you talk to a Christian or a Muslim that to change their religion, there is no carrot. Nobody can absolve the sins that you do. The Christian guy said, look, I can go to the church, put the $100 in the hat, and I'm forgiven. Why would I join you?
One of them said to me, he said, why would I do that? Then you're in your faith. I can't, I'm going to be punished at the end of in my life. I go, well, there's only one God. Yeah, but my God's going to forgive me.
That's right.
He in purgatory.
Well, you have to, again, it's all education. And once people know that impacts of what you do in this world is with you for eternity, then they will look for methodology not to create harm, because they can't erase it. So that's really the key, is to educate people. Whether you believe in gravity or not, it doesn't matter. You jump out of the 5th floor of a building, you're going to come down.
You're down. I kind of explained that, and they're going, well, I don't want to hear it. It was like, no, I don't believe it. I said, oh, well, it is what it is.
No,
I should use the gravity thing that you said. That might make more sense. Then I'll try that one next time.
No, I mean, reality doesn't change. Even Muhammad says that reality is one, and foolish people made it many.
Oh, okay. That's another good one. I have to remember these little acronyms to help it work, because sometimes you just can't make sense and you look at them. And I just said, well, that ain't happening here. I'm not gonna waste any more time. I'm gonna go to the next.
No, of course. You know, the Muslim religion was reaching Russia, and a lot of, actually, some of the Chechens are Muslims. Actually, there's certain areas in Tajikistan, Turkmenistan, the old Soviet, they were actually Muslims generally. But when the religion of Islam came to Russia, it says this is too cold of a place not to drink vodka, so we can't become Muslims. So
that's what they say. Oh my God! That's just like the rosary beads. They can't give up the rosary. I can't be forgiven, and I ain't changing. Oh, I didn't think of that. That's correct.
Well, I told them they can keep the rosary beads, but
yeah.
Okay.
But they'd rather substitute with a bottle of vodka and stay that way. I said, okay.
All right, so let's read one more.
I guess you want me to go ahead?
Go ahead.
He is God. Among the fundamental principles of Baha'u'llah is the abandonment of national, religious, racial, and political prejudice. For humanity hath been afflicted with the sickness of prejudice, and this is a chronic sickness, whose results are fatal. All differences, wars, conflicts, and incidents of bloodshed are occasioned by this prejudice. Every war that you see is generated by either religious, racial, or national prejudice, or political prejudice is to blame, and as long as these prejudices continue, mankind will not see rest.
Exactly. So here, when you're looking at the Second World War, it was prejudice against religious. They wanted to eliminate Jews generally, and they wanted to free those Christian countries that were enslaved by their masters, and they expanded. They used this excuse to expand, and of course, majority of it was because of the First World War, and they put conditions on Germany to a degree that they couldn't free themselves from the penalties that were put into them, and that created the movement that started the Second World War. So now we learned actually from that, and the Marshall Plan after the Second World War eliminate that process of penalizing people that start the war to a degree that they couldn't even operate as a nation. But the reality is that that was part of the doctrine of economic condition, that you put a country, and for them to defend themselves, they had to dig themselves out of the obligations that the humanity would put on them in general. So here you see political prejudice, which was created wars in Cambodia, Vietnam, all the Tiger Belt countries that they called it at the time domino doctrine. And Russian or Soviet Union was trying to change their government and promoting communism and socialism into those countries. Ironically, eventually it failed. In Cambodia, half of the population perished. 2 million people were were slaughtered by Khmer Rouge, which were basically supported by China and USSR at the time. So atrocities occurred when religion of God was taken away. So any doctrine, these people that point at the atrocities that occurs in the wars, religious wars, those are puny compared to hundreds of millions of people that died because of irreligion in China, in East Asia, in West Asia, in Russia, for that matter. You know, when the communist country came in, I think they killed close to 30 million of their own people that they disagreed with. So you see, lack of religion, atrocities and killing that occurred in the 20th century is not even comparable to the entire history of humanity. We didn't kill that many people because of the doctrine of prejudice against politics.
So Russia could continue this for years, and the same thing can happen, and maybe 1 million people can die in Ukraine and Russia, and they'll, because history says they're
already there. Look at the whole process of Iranian war with Iraq. You know, when the minute clergy came to power in Iran, the first thing that they tried to do is export Shia Islam throughout the world, and they're going to conquer and make everybody Shia Muslim. And guess what happened? They tried to destabilize Iraqi government, and those guys attacked. Western countries supported Iraq because they didn't want expansion of Iran. And guess what? Close to about, I think, 800,000, some people say 1 million people died during 8 years war. It was basically like a First World War type of war, you know, with rifles and mustard gas that they were gassing each other, or they were gassing Iranians because they didn't have any biological or chemical bombs in their hands. But this thing occurred when you look at the source of it, it was religion. 1 million people, close to 1 million, God knows how many people got maimed. God knows how many millions of people suffered health problems because of the those chemical attacks that they did. Ironically, all of it was in the name of God.
Are you speaking about Agent Orange being used as a defoliant in Vietnam?
No, it was mustard gas and the different gases that the Iraqis, because they didn't, Iraqis are not as large of a population as Iranians do. And at the time, they were brainwashing kids in Iran to go to war to become a martyr, that they would inherit 72 versions. So, and they were giving each one of them, these are kids 14 to maybe 17 years old. Each one of them, they were given a key when they were walking over mines, that this key is the key of the heaven. And when you get martyred, you're going to go and get your prize in heaven. You know, it seems strange to us now, and this is exactly what happened 40 years ago. Now those Iranians know better.
I missed that. Who did that with the key? They gave it to the Iranians, the
Ayatollahs, the
Ayatollahs, soldiers that are the kids.
That's right. There were soldiers that were walking over the mines on motorcycles.
Oh. Unbelievable. So they blow up the
Now
mind.
you see how barbaric it is, and this brainwashing of the ecclesiastical structure. That's why the ecclesiastical structure was abolished in Baha'i religion. The damage they cause is irreparable. Not only they killed basically Shia Islam, they destroyed, actually, they made people anti-religion. And all these truths are coming out. You know, the first time they got into power after a few years, they, I think, massacred 17,000 youth that were basically socialist or communist.
Is that before the Shah or after the Shah?
In Iran.
Was that before the Shah or after the Shah that happened?
No, these are after the Shah. Shah wouldn't do these things.
Why do you think
they would jail those
after,
people.
You're talking what, 1980, 89?
That's right. That's actually was maybe earlier than that.
Okay, 80s when because
That's right.
Right got out, was he out of power in 80s, right?
You know who was the judge? This basic group that was issuing death warrants for the socialists or communists. It was the Raisi, the current president, the current deceased president of Iran. Was one of them.
Okay, so they didn't bring any of that up when the history, they just kind of forget about it and they just overlook it. And
not really. The problem with it, as I said before, these are processes that they advertise to their own people that he eliminated infidels, people that were against Islam. He was the champion. Remember, you can brainwash people with any message, especially people that believe in clergy. Now, if you don't believe in clergy, then you would examine whatever word comes out of their mouth. But reality doesn't change. These are written in the history. Actually, I was reading one of the writings of one of these ayatollahs, and he was mentioning that when they write history books in the future, all these atrocities would do such a damage to the Shia Islam that no one could lift his head. These were, of course, I'm paraphrasing. The atrocities that occurred under this regime. So you see, when they come to power and they try to brainwash people, they created wars. The whole Middle East is in fire because of their ideology and export of their religion and ideology. So prejudice against religion, no, everybody should be Muslim, everybody should be Shiite, not only Muslim, they should be Shiite. So that prejudice caused probably a couple of million deaths already. God knows how many people got maimed and generations were lost. So these are the key elements that we have to look at the history. Unfortunately, these young people that go and they actually attack these statutes of of prior heroes of history in United States, they have no idea. We should send them to live in those countries to get a taste of what lawlessness means and dictatorial type of process. So these are key elements, and it's all people that ignore, this is a major saying, people that ignore history are bound to repeat it. Now, in late 1800, late 1900, early 2000, when constitutional monarchy came to Iran, the first people that attacked it and they wanted to reverse it were the clergy. Same guys that are in power today. And they were blaming whoever was for constitutional monarchy, they were blaming it on Baha'i religion. And they were killing them because they weren't even Baha'is, but they were capturing them, and in the name of Baha'i, being Baha'i, they were killing them. So that's how they eliminated. Eventually, obviously, the constitutional monarchy prevailed, but eventually got diluted later on, and these people came back to power. So those people in Iran that voted to elect this government deserve the outcome because they didn't read their ignorance. They didn't read their own history of how many of the territory of Iran was given away by the clergy, how many atrocities they did, massacres they did. But now that internet is everywhere and people have access to read and write, and they don't believe in clergy anymore, all these things will come to light sooner or later. All right, I think we should stop here. Any closing comments? If not, we can do the closing prayer. We need a volunteer.
Sorry about
Also-
that.
Go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
O thou merciful God, O thou who art mighty and powerful, O thou most kind Father, these servants have gathered together, turning to thee, supplicating thy threshold, desiring thine endless bounties from the great assurance. They have no purpose save thy good pleasure. They have no intention save service to the world of humanity. O God, make this assemblage radiant, make the hearts merciful, confer the bounties of the Holy Spirit, endow them with a power from heaven. Bless them with heavenly minds, increase their sincerity, so that with all humility and contrition they may turn to thy kingdom and be occupied with the service to the world of humanity. May each one become a radiant candle. May each one become a brilliant star. May each one become beautiful in color and redolent in fragrance in the kingdom of God. O kind Father, confer thy blessings, consider not our shortcomings, shelter us under thy protection. Remember not our sins, heal us with thy mercy. We are weak, thou art the mighty. We are poor, and thou art rich. We are sick, thou art the physician. We are needy, and thou art the most generous. O God, endow us with thy providence. Thou art the powerful, thou art the giver, thou art the beneficent. Abdul-Baha.
Thank you very much for attending. Hopefully we see you all next Monday, same time.
Yeah, but thank you. I learned a lot tonight. That was very, very interesting for me, and I want to thank you. It gives me much to think about tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.